Hello students, today we're going to practice the ABCs of watercolor. You'll need a few items. You need to have a large brush, watercolor palette, some paper towel, 2 cups of water, and some nice thick watercolor paper. Set your paper up like this. You want to have 4 squares that are 2 inches across and down, some small squares, 5 of them, and then room for 5 more 2-inch squares at the bottom. In this video, we're just going to focus on the top 4. So we're going to practice 4 different techniques. The first one is a flat wash. You need to take water, and we're going to use the dark blue paint. So take some water, place it on the paint, stir it around, and you need to be a bit patient with this because you want to have enough paint that you can have enough to do what you'd like it to do. So you can see I'm pulling it out onto the palette. As I twist the brush, I'm kind of holding the brush sideways. You don't want to push straight down because that will smash the bristles of your brush. So hold it sideways and twist, and you can drag it across like this. And you can kind of tell how dark it is when you put it out in the mixing area by just dragging it across. So that can help you figure that out. Now this is a practice page, so if you make mistakes like I did right off the bat, that's okay because we're just practicing. Okay, so for the first one, this is a flat wash. To do this, you want to have plenty of paint. It should be nice and wet on a nice big brush, and you're just going to drag the brush across. You can reload the brush, so if you feel like you're running out of paint, you can come over and pick up some more and continue dragging it across the paper like that. If you feel like you need to pick up a block that's gone too dark, you can take your brush, rinse it in your rinse water, squeeze the extra out so you're using it to blot, and then you can just barely touch down on the side and pick up that extra paint if you feel like you've got too much. Next up, we're going to try a graded wash. Before we start this, I want to get some more paint, so I'm going to take some clean water, stir some more so I have plenty of paint to work with. I want this to be nice and dark. You don't want to try and do this graded wash with something really light like a yellow because it's really hard to see the change. We want to see a change from the top to the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to start by taking my brush loaded with the dark paint. I'm going to paint it across like this. Next up, I'm going to dip my brush in the water once, wipe it on the side a bit, and then drag it underneath like that. Then I'm going to dip it again, blot it on the edge of the cup, and drag it again. It should be getting lighter and lighter as I go down. And then I'm going to dip it 3 times, drag it across, and then it should be nice and light by the time I get to the bottom. So we're getting that change from light to dark. Next one is called the dry brush. So for this one, you need to have a dry brush. Take your paper towel, squeeze out all of the extra water so it's nice and dry. You'll notice that I'm losing my flat point. I'm just going to go right into the paint over here, not into this well where it's mixed with a lot of water. And I'm just going to drag it across. You should be able to see white spots through the dry brushing. This is a nice technique if you want to get some kind of texture going. Okay, last one is wet on wet. For this one, I want to start with clean water, and this is why I have 2 cups. I'm going to swirl this one in my dirty water, clean the extra out, come over to the clean water, and I'm just going to paint it over my square. And I'm going to let it sit there a minute. While it's sitting, I'm going to mix up a second color. I think for this one, I'm going to mix up some red. So I'm going to take some clean water, drop it on the red, stir it around a bit, bring it out into my mixing area. See if I can get it nice and dark. Alright, so I'm going to use the blue and the red for this. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is the water soaked into the paper a bit. The next thing I want to do is to just blot it just lightly. It should be still kind of wet, but if you feel it and it doesn't feel wet, you may want to go back and re-wet it. It feels perfect right now. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my blue paint and I'm going to drag it across, and I'm putting it outside of the square and inside. And notice how the brush changes. It changes from where it's inside the square and out. And you can just do a few more just to see how it reacts where it's wet as opposed to where it's dry. And next up, you can see it's kind of bleeding out a bit in here. Next, I'm going to clean my brush out and grab some of that red paint and try the same thing with the red. So I'm starting up here outside, letting it drag down through. So now I'm allowing those colors to sort of mingle and mix together. And that is called wet into wet.